Magic's the GOAT point guard. I don't think that you can talk me off that ledge.
We already have current day Magic Johnson, and his name is Ben Simmons, and he's trash.
We had superior athletes.
You're calling LeBron a bummer?
Why are we losing to Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, Bam Adebayo, with Michael Jordan?
The older generation gets tricked by NBA Centel.
100%. I've been tricked by NBA Centel.
Steph Curry has revolutionized the three-point shot.
But we also had guys shooting the long ball back then. We had Dale Ellis. We had Larry Bird. We had Craig Hodges.
I've never heard of Dale Ellis.
I hear some of the dumbest stuff that I've ever heard in my life from you guys.
And I hear some of the dumbest stuff from OGs.
Because you 12, that's why.
Welcome to One Fan vs. 10 Haters. Today we have the illustrious, esteemed guest, Mr. OG Jermaine, in the building to battle a dream team of superstar villains, Gen Z. Our panel of judges will determine who won the debate and officially say which era of basketball was better. Jermaine, are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
The floor is yours.
Magic's the GOAT point guard. I don't think that you can talk me off that ledge. I'm convinced of it.
OG, what up?
What's up, brother? How you doing, my man?
Repeat that statement.
Magic Johnson is the best point guard in NBA history.
Why do you think that?
He revolutionized the position. Not only did he revolutionize the position, he was that from the door, and he stayed that for as long as he was in the league, which was 12 seasons, first team All-NBA.
You don't care that he played with Kareem? You don't care that he played with James Worthy?
I don't care.
You don't care that Steph Curry has revolutionized the three-point
Absolutely.
shot, that he's completely changed the game?
Actually, he didn't revolutionize it. He enhanced it because
No, he revolutionized because they wasn't shooting it at all before. They was not shooting it at all. You know, your era wasn't shooting that.
100%.
Your era don't shoot that. Your era was straight mid-range.
Have you ever heard of Dale Ellis?
Paint.
Have you ever heard of Larry Bird?
No, who?
Have you ever heard of Dale Ellis?
Who is that?
I'm you.
No,
Of course
I
you
don't care
don't.
about who you're talking about
Of course,
right now.
I
And Steph
care
Curry, you
what you're
have
talking
to
about,
care.
Steph.
He's the best point guard ever.
And now I'm schooling you to Dale Ellis, right? Now I'm schooling you to Larry Bird. I'm schooling you to Craig Hodges, right?
Stick to Steph and Magic.
So let's stick to Steph and Magic.
Who's a better shooter?
Steph Curry's a better
Who's a better
long ball
finisher?
shooter. Oh, Magic.
Who's a better passer?
Magic.
Who's a better mid-range shooter?
I'll give Curry that.
I know you do. Who's a better
won.
playoff performer?
Magic.
At what?
100%.
He can't shoot. He don't got no left hand.
Even if he didn't have any left hand, or even if he couldn't
don't.
shoot, I can
He
tell you that.
don't.
I can tell you what he did do.
What he do?
He's a part of the biggest collapse in NBA history, being up 3-1 and actually losing an NBA championship. I'm sorry, sir. I can't hear. Let me clean my ears out so make sure I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. So
let me tell you what Steph is better at.
Yes,
First of all,
what he's better
Steph
at.
is a four-time champion.
100%.
Steph is a unanimous
I'm a five-time
MVP.
champion.
No,
Okay.
Steph is a unanimous MVP. You know what that
100%.
means? You want me to spell it for you?
Please,
that
put me
means
on.
nobody else got a vote.
Right.
Steph got
Which
that.
is nuts, by the way.
No, it ain't nuts.
Which
Because
is
Magic
nuts.
wasn't getting the
So
vote.
I'm glad
you
you
could
brought
put
that
any
up.
season with Matt. He wasn't getting
and
the
I'm
vote.
glad you brought
He ain't
that
got
up.
no left hand.
Sure.
He's 6'9" Ben Simmons. Steph Curry is really one of the best point guards we've ever seen in our life. My life, your life. You older than me. And you have never seen a point guard better than Steph. And that's a fact.
Well, there's two things. You just said he's one of the best point guards. We're talking about the best
he's
point
better than
guard. Not
Magic.
only is
Magic's
he
not
the
even
best point
top
guard,
two.
I'm winning MVPs when Bird is in the league. I'm winning MVPs when Jordan is in the league. I'm winning MVPs
Steph won
when
an MVP
Jabbar,
with LeBron.
when him in the league, right?
Steph won an MVP with Kevin Durant.
Yes, he did.
Steph won an MVP with all these players.
100%.
What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that he won it with these players who you tell me that these players are better than.
Steph
so
is
Bird,
better than all of them.
no,
Steph
he's
is
not
better
better
than
than
Bird,
Bird.
too.
He's not better
Steph
than
is
Bird.
better than Magic,
He's not
bro.
better than
Steph is a better shooter.
Absolutely
He's a
not.
better scorer by far.
No way,
it's
not
not
by
even
far.
close.
All he does is shoot
And
the
he
long
can
ball.
actually
That's
dribble
it.
with the
He
left
doesn't
hand.
do anything
He
else
got the
except
right hand, left hand, the yo-yo. He has all the
For you to
moves.
say that
This
he
man
can't
was dribbling like this.
For you to say he can't
Like
dribble
this.
right,
Like this.
and not only was he
Back to the
dribbling like
basket.
right, and not only
That's
dribbling, and not only
nasty.
dribbling like that, finishing like that, and put it. Oh.
All right, y'all were not finding any common ground, so I forgot to mention 24-second shot clock once is getting too contentious. Finish your thought.
The point that I was making was Magic being revolutionary. You talk about Steph Curry, he enhanced the three-point shot because guys were shooting it. There was no 6'9" point guard in the league before Magic showed up. And if no Magic, there is no Luka. There is no Penny Hardaway. There is no big guard. Steph Curry, who is a long ball shooter, he enhanced that, and he made that a bigger deal than what it was. But Magic revolutionized the game.
That was electric. All right, next victim.
Damn.
What's up, brother? How you doing?
What's up, man?
Yes. What's going on, brother?
All right, I had a quick question. If Magic Johnson was in the NBA today, what would his stat line look like?
If Magic Johnson was in the NBA today with the amount of switching that we have in the NBA, with the amount of defense that we have, how wide open the floor is, Magic Johnson would be what Luka is doing. It would be something similar to
What do you mean what Luka's doing?
What Luka was doing in terms of
He can't
assists.
shoot the ball.
I'm glad you brought that up because we're talking about a slower pace in the NBA, right? When the big man was just throwing the ball into the big man. If he couldn't shoot the ball, where's that 24 game that he was getting? Where's that 20? Because he had a 5-year stretch where he averaged 22 a game.
Yeah, he wouldn't do that in today's NBA. I'll tell you exactly.
In fact, not only would he do that today, he would be even better today at that because the game is so wide open. And now I got guys like Joel Embiid trying to cover Magic 22, 23 feet away from the basket. And I got guys like Trae Young trying to deal with Magic Johnson in transition. That's lunch meat right there.
Current day Magic Johnson would be Ben Simmons. And Ben Simmons is better in every... Ben Simmons is a better passer. He was a defensive player of the year. What separates...
Never won defensive player of the year,
And also, I'll go as
ever.
far as to say
Made all-league defensive
Magic
team
Johnson is
one
one of the
time.
worst NBA players of all time.
Made
He had
the
no
all-league
skill.
defensive team
He's
one
the
time.
least skilled NBA player of all time. What was he good at? Nothing.
Everything.
Being big. That's the only thing he was ever good at. But in today's NBA, you can't do that. You're going to be exploited. You know why? Because you just had Luka. Luka could shoot the ball. Luka's a better passer. Luka's better at everything besides being 6'9", because that's your only argument.
Sure.
We already have current day Magic Johnson, and his name is Ben Simmons, and he's trash. He's terrible.
So if Magic
the only player that's worse than Magic Johnson is Russell Westbrook, who also can't shoot.
Right. So if Magic was as trash as he is,
Yeah.
and Ben Simmons was as good as he is,
Yeah.
what are we doing with Ben Simmons today?
I didn't say Ben Simmons is good. You said that.
I didn't.
Magic Johnson
You
is what
said
Ben
that.
Simmons is. That's
So-
not what I said.
So if Magic Johnson was what Ben Simmons is, how many all league performances does Ben Simmons have?
Ben Simmons is not good.
Okay, well Magic is because
Neither is Magic Johnson.
Because Magic Johnson
Magic
was
Johnson
first team
played
All-Pro
against plumbers.
9 straight years.
Who did he play?
Who did he play?
Bums.
I'm sorry, John
Straight
Stockton, Dennis
trash.
Johnson.
They're literally
John Stockton,
terrible. They
Dennis
wouldn't do anything.
Johnson.
Kyrie
Not
Irving is
only-
better than John Stockton.
Who?
Kyrie Irving is better than John
Kyrie
Stockton.
Irving is a better ball handler than
He's
John
better
Stockton.
in every.
That's it.
What's
So he's
John
a better
Stockton better
defender?
at? Yes.
He's a better passer.
Yes!
Oh my
Are you
God.
kidding me?
I'm losing years of my life. This is nuts. Oh my God. Oh my. Anyway, I'm gonna stay focused. So as I was saying, there is no comparison between Magic Johnson and Ben Simmons. Oh.
You can finish your thought.
There is no comparison between Magic Johnson and Ben Simmons. He is not the scorer. He is not the distributor. He is not the playmaker. He is not any of those things. He is not the floor leader that Magic Johnson was, is, or will ever be. And it's evident because he's been already on what? 3 teams in 5 years? Magic played for the Lakers for 12 straight years, and he was not a point guard. He was the lead guard. Ben Simmons has never been the lead guard, ever.
All right. Also, the shot clock, it's more like football. If it ends when you're talking, you get to run the play out.
What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
Yes, sir.
All right, so you talk about how Steph only enhanced the three-pointer, how he didn't revolutionize it. How you feel that Draymond has more career threes than Larry Bird? They weren't shooting the three about that much back then. I mean, like, Steph made everyone shoot the three. He's inspiring players now to shoot the three, and he's really just changed the entire game by shooting the three.
Would that help the fact that he played with Klay Thompson, who was another great long ball shooter? I think that has a lot to do with it because as good as Steph Curry was as a long ball shooter, when you got another sniper that can shoot just as well as you do, and with him shooting as well as he did, making the game even better, when you have that on your team, I think that we completely forget about how good the long ball was with those guys enhancing it. But we also had guys shooting the long ball back then. We had Dale Ellis. We had Larry Bird. We had Craig Hodges. We had great long ball shooters who could shoot the basketball, like Steve Kerr, right? We had all of these guys who could shoot the basketball. They weren't shooting it at the volume that these guys are shooting it at today because the game is a lot more wide open than it was 25 years ago because it was played through the big man. But it's not like those guys couldn't shoot the basketball. Because I'm trying to imagine Dale Ellis with the amount of spacing playing with with Joel Embiid or playing with Joker. It would be incredible today.
I've never heard of Dale Ellis. Who's Dale Ellis?
Of course you haven't. Of course you haven't heard of Dale Ellis because you're 12. That's why. You've never heard of Dale Ellis. That's what that would explain it. And what's interesting is 20 years from now, somebody's going to tell you, yo, Steph Curry was a plumber. Steph Curry played against Gen Zs and SoundCloud rappers. That's what they're going to tell you that he played against. And you're going to want to jump over this table and you're going to want to choke him out because you've seen Steph Curry. Because you know how good Steph Curry is as a long ball shooter. You know how good he is as a player. But this is what I got to deal with when I got to deal with you telling me that John Stockton, or not just John Stockton, but Dale Ellis and Craig Hodges and all of these great long ball shooters, you don't know who they are. Go do your homework.
Steph Curry played against LeBron 4 years in a row in the finals. You're calling LeBron a plumber? And how do you think
didn't call him
Clay's
a
getting
plumber.
all? You say that Steph played with plumbers. He played against LeBron 4 years in a row.
Okay, first of all, I didn't say he played against plumbers. I said that's what you're going to have to listen to 20 years from now. And with you having to listen to that, you already seen what Steph Curry looks like. But with that being said, let's get back to the point. Let's get back to the point at hand and Steph Curry being a lead guard and not being better than Magic Johnson, who revolutionized the game at the point guard spot and did everything that now point guards are compared to. Because who are we comparing Steph Curry to and other point guards? We're not comparing him to anybody else except Magic Johnson.
All right, MD Foodie Boys, thank you so much for joining us.
Please go check out Dale Ellis.
Last round for this topic.
We're good.
What's up, Dales?
Listen, man, let's expose Magic Johnson right now.
do it.
Build a team around Magic Johnson in today's game where he doesn't get exposed. Because I'm looking at Magic Johnson, we're leaving him wide open from 3, OG. We're leaving him open. What center is he going to play with? What center is he going to play with where you're going to be able to just have all this spacing around him? I would love to know. Let me know.
The centers that he could play around, he could play with Joel Embiid. He could play with Joker. In fact,
That spacing with Joel Embiid?
Absolutely.
How's that going to work?
Absolutely, it's going to work because I don't think you give Magic Johnson enough credit for the respect respectable shooter that he was.
Tell me
Again,
respectable shooters. We're comparing this to Steph Curry, by the way. Comparing this
absolutely.
to Steph Curry. Who's
100
easier to build a team around? It's not close, OG.
Is it easier to build the team around a guy who plays off the basketball, shoots the basketball the way Steph Curry does?
Absolutely.
Or a guy who, in the game being as wide open as it is today, a transition player like
Yes.
Magic Johnson is, a passer that Magic Johnson is, a scorer at the rim, and a guy who sees the floor as well as Magic Johnson
He needs
does.
to be as
Who,
dominant
by the
as
way, I wanna
Giannis,
make
as Jokic, as all these
I wanna make
guys.
sure that I want to make sure that I remember this. He is 6'9".
Absolutely.
Not 6'2" or 6'3". He's
Absolutely.
6'9",
No,
with
no.
eyes in
Hold
the
on.
back of his
Let's
head.
talk about him and Joel Embiid.
Sure.
Joel Embiid's in the post. Whoever's on Magic, we're doubling.
I'm
We're
glad
doubling
you're
right
doubling
away.
it.
You go
100%.
ahead. That respectable shooter, go ahead. Let him
Sure.
shoot.
Yep. You're gonna have to give up something. 100%. You're
What
gonna
am-
have to give up.
yeah.
You're gonna have to
I'm
give
giving
up.
up Magic Johnson shooting.
100%.
Easy.
You're gonna have
Every
to give
time.
up something. And when you give that up, you said the same thing. And I've heard this so many different times. We're gonna let LeBron shoot. How well did LeBron?
LeBron's a
do?
better shooter than Magic Johnson.
Well, I can tell you this.
Especially today, he's a 40% three-point shooter.
We're going to let LeBron shoot. We're letting LeBron shoot. I think he ended up scoring the most points in NBA history. So let Magic shoot, and you're going to lose. You're going to
He's going to hit 40% of his threes.
Absolutely.
40%. You're making that up. There's nothing you can say that's going to hit that.
I'm not saying
40%?
that. No, I didn't say he was going to hit 40% of his
What's he
threes.
gonna hit,
What
32%? We're cool with that.
What I did say is that you're not going to force him into shooting 8 or 9 threes a game. You're not going to do that.
In
And the
today's
reason why-
game,
no,
when
you're
most
not
guys
gonna do
got
that.
5 shooters out there, a
Right.
minimum 4,
Right.
you're going to have a team where he has 3 shooters around him if everything's going well. You got to have at least 3 shooters
And
out
if
there.
you got 3 shooters around Magic Johnson, how much better is he going to be as a distributor and a playmaker and getting downhill
OG,
and getting those
if he
guys
doesn't
better
have the
shots?
ball, what's he going to do?
That's
If he doesn't have the ball, what's he going to do?
That's the point that I'm making because I'm the lead guard. I got the ball in my hands. That's why I'm going to be so much better. And because I got 3 shooters around me. So if I got Gary Trent or somebody like that around me, how many better shots am I going to get him? Because you're going to be so focused on me getting to the rim. You say that you're going to double off me, you can double off me all you want. Just like they doubled off a bunch of other players in the league, but they still got to the rim and they still scored the basketball at a high rate. And Magic Johnson, if you're going to double off me, I can play in the mid-range and I can knock down open shots. And if I do that, now you have to come see me. And if you come see me, here comes the double. And I'm finding this guy. I'm finding that guy. And I'm finding that guy. And now guess what? You're home watching the playoffs. Meanwhile, we're raising the trophy.
Wow.
The Bulls in 1990, I think their run was better than what the Warriors did in 2010.
Are you saying for the era what they did is more impressive, or do you think if they played in whichever era, the Bulls would beat the Warriors?
I think that if they played in this era, I think that it would be a lot more of an advantage for the Bulls because I'm trying to imagine not being able to put hands on Michael Jordan. I'm trying to imagine Steph Curry having to deal with the switches that you guys talk about. I'm trying to imagine him having to deal with Scottie Pippen in transition or in the half court. I'm trying to imagine with the triangle offense and as much action as the Golden State Warriors run, the triangle offense was revolutionary. And that kind of action, I'm trying to imagine the Warriors trying to deal with that, even with Kevin Durant.
It was revolutionary for 1992.
Sure.
Nowadays, to think a team is going to come out here and have any X's and O's that are revolutionary when you have 30-plus years of smart coaches making smart adjustments, just on that level, everything that Steve Kerr knows that version of Phil Jackson doesn't have the ability to know, it would be a bloodbath in that regard. Just from the pure X's and O's, the way that they're going to switch and peel back and recover, it's going to be no contest there. So I guess you can put that aside if that wasn't a thing. You think on paper the talent level was better across the roster?
I don't think that the talent level on paper was that far apart. I mean, don't get me wrong, you add Kevin Durant to a Warrior squad. I mean, that's like adding Shaq to the 96 Bulls. I mean, that's almost unfair. However, there are ways to neutralize things like that. And what the Chicago Bulls did, which I want to make sure that I'm clear, with the run that they had. I mean, Michael Jordan, 4 to 6 years that he played on that team, they won 60-plus games, including a 67, a 73, and a 69-win team. They were running through the league, a much more physical league at that time. In terms of scoring, there were teams specifically there to beat them. And the triangle offense was just revolutionary with all the action that they had.
Was it worse at offense or was it more physical? Because you could say it's more physical because they're banging around down
Sure.
low. I would say today is less physical because the shooters are out there and it's a lot harder to bang around. Because if you're focused on banging around down low, having these enforcers on the court, you're going to get destroyed by all the skill
Right.
level across the court. And it doesn't get higher skill level from 1 through 10 on the roster
Right.
than the 2017 Warriors. I think if you're talking who's going to play each other today and have a chance to win a 7-game series in this era or that, not a contest there. And if you want to look at who has a more impressive run, I think it's pretty clear the overall skill level is higher across the league today. You said teams were built to beat the Bulls back then. They were built to beat the Warriors too. It was a shorter run, so I guess you saw less of a league-wide roster construction. But we had the Rockets, we had the Cavs. In the same way that you can say who they played was more impressive to you in the Bulls for whatever reasons, they did have to face a player who is arguably just as good, if not better, than Jordan himself,
Right.
and they beat him. multiple times. So I don't know what you give to the Bulls besides longevity, which, they stuck together longer. Good for them. They had the break in the middle to revitalize themselves that Kevin Durant didn't give the Warriors a chance to do.
Right.
So besides longevity, I don't think they peak better. I don't think they would 1v1. I don't think they play tougher competition. I'm not sure why they get the greatest dynasty of all time over the Warriors.
Well, you just mentioned something that was really interesting. The greatest part about having the burden of proof putting on you, you have to make sure that you give that person things that they can't explain. So, for example, you just talked about them having the run that they had, the Golden State Warriors, and sure that they ended up they lost to some teams. Well, the Bulls didn't lose to anybody. The Bulls went 6-0 during that run.
If we ignore the year they lost,
and the teams that they lost to, the Golden State Warriors in particular, they had the biggest collapse in NBA history. They actually won 73 games. Not only did they win 73 games, they were up 3-1 in a series and could have won. That never happened to the Bulls in any stretch.
So you're referencing pre-KD. That's like me referencing early Jordan before he was actually the version he is of himself. That's not the same type of team. KD on is the one that's the best team of all time. So yeah, the baby version of that wasn't quite superpower like you said. They added Shaq to the Bulls. Yeah, they lost beforehand, but when we talk about the best team of all time,
you are aware that they won 73 games without KD. You are
and they
aware
got
of
even
that?
better.
I
And
just
they
wanna
got
make sure
even better.
you
So
got me clear
imagine
on
that. Imagine
Okay.
73 adding KD.
Right.
That's why it's
Well,
such a non-contest.
think about why they had to add KD. They had to add KD because they lost
I'm
at their
only talking
superpowers.
post-KD. KD's the version that's not a contest.
Really quickly, that Bulls run of 6 championships in 8 years, 4 times, winning over 60 games. Michael Jordan winning the league MVP 1, 2, 3 times during that stretch. That team never losing in the NBA Finals, running through the Eastern Conference, I believe, in 1996, and running through the NBA the way that they did. Even in that era, or the 60s or the 70s, the 80s or 90s, I don't think that's been matched.
You know
by
what?
the
If
Golden State
free agency
Warriors.
was around like it was today, Scottie Pippen would have left early and they would have had that chance. So that's the
Well,
difference.
Okay, let's wrap it up, people. Thank you. Next up, this is a great one. It's a heavyweight battle right here.
Nephew, what up?
What's up, OG?
What up, brother?
I feel like there's a blatant disrespect for the 2017 Warriors once they got Kevin Durant. I think if you're talking about the Warriors in 2015 and 2016, you have an argument. I think there's too much talent on the post-Warriors with Kevin Durant for them to not be as good as the Bulls.
Yep.
You have Steph Curry, you have Klay Thompson, you have Kevin Durant, you have Draymond Green, you also have Andre Iguodala off the bench. We're talking about a 5-year run that should have ended in 4 NBA championships. They should have three-peated with KD. They didn't because he got hurt. I know, and I think you agree, a healthy Warriors beats the 2019 Raptors in the finals.
I think that's a legit argument, but to counter what you just said, so in the 1995-96 Bulls that won 72 games, so they had the best player in the game in Jordan, they had the best all-around player in the game in Scottie Pippen, they had the best rebounder in the game in Dennis Rodman, they had the best six-man in the game in Tony Kukoc, they had the best coach in the game in Phil Jackson, and they had the second best marksman in the game in Steve Kerr. That doesn't sound like an okay team. That sounds like a pretty damn good team to me.
And we're talking about the Warriors
100%.
who got a unanimous MVP, another MVP. The Bulls did not have 2 MVPs on their team.
100%.
The Warriors did. They had a defensive player of the year in Draymond Green, who you can argue is one of the best defensive players that has ever played, and Klay Thompson, one of the best 3-and-D players in the history of the game, and Andre Iguodala. I could compare him to Tony Kukoc. I think Tony Kukoc offensively could be better. Defensively, Iguodala is better. And if we're playing by today's rules, where there's zone defense, the Bulls did not have to run into zone defense back then because I implemented in the 2000s. So I'm thinking about the spacing of that team and how it would compare to the Warriors, who you couldn't help off anybody. Steph Curry had so much gravity. They were helping off of Kevin Durant, and he was getting wide open jump shots. We're talking about leaving 40% three-point shooters open almost every possession down the court. And then the last thing I'll mention is that I feel like the Bulls did not play a big 3 as good as the 2017 Cavaliers with LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love. Their run might have been dominant, but they did not play a team as good as that Cavaliers team.
So let's go back to what you just talked about when you talked about the team that they not the team that they were playing. So let's go back to what you talked about MVP. So Scottie Pippen finished 3rd in MVP.
But he didn't win it.
No, he didn't.
No.
But we didn't know that he was that good. We did not know that.
KD is that good, though.
We didn't know that he was that good. 100%. And remember why KD got on that crew. The same reason why Steph Curry was already on the crew. Because you can't beat him without us, We can't beat him.
It's because it's LeBron James.
We didn't have to worry about that, though, because I'm already on the crew. And now we get a rebounder in Dennis Rodman who makes us so much better. He's a defender who makes us so much better.
But the Bulls also didn't have LeBron. Right. They didn't have to play LeBron James.
The reason why they didn't have to play LeBron James
because
they already had him.
Yes, I understand.
Listen,
I think you can argue for MJ being a GOAT.
100%.
But what I'm saying is that the Bulls did not have to play a team as good as the LeBron James-led Cavaliers.
Well,
I don't think they've played a team as good as the 2019 Raptors.
Well,
I think the 2019 Raptors, you look at top to bottom depth with Fred VanVleet, Kawhi Leonard, Kyle Lowry, Marc Gasol, Pascal Siakam, Serge Ibaka. I don't think any of the teams the Bulls played in the finals is better than that team.
You sure about that? Because
yes.
I don't know. That 98 Jazz team was
They were like
damn
36
good.
years old.
Right, and they were still they were leading the league in score. They were leading the league in scoring that year. And that's including with the Bulls running around. They were leading the league in scoring that year. They had a league MVP in Karl Malone. They had arguably the best distributor in the game. They had a marksman in Jeff Hornacek. They had one of the better lockdown defenders in Bryant Russell. They had a great dirty work guy in Austin Carr. They had everything that's necessary. Like you just
the
talked
Raptors
about.
have that though, because
right?
I didn't mention Danny Green, who you can with Brian Russell 3-point shooting, defending.
Sure,
he's one of the best 3-and-Ds as well. So I think the Raptors just overall had more depth. Maybe you want to argue Karl Malone and John Stockton. They had more star power, but I'm looking at Kawhi Leonard, Pascal Siakam, Kyle Lowry. Those are 3 all-star level players on one team.
Right. And with that being said, I think that the teams that the Bulls ran into, that Phoenix team, that Portland Trailblazers team, that Seattle team, I think that those teams are comparable to the teams that we've seen in the 2010s in terms of champions. Now, I can't say with the Cleveland Cavaliers team because they won it. So I think that that's a little bit different. But in terms of losers, I think that all of those loser teams are comparable, including the 2019 Toronto Raptors. I think they're comparable to all those teams. Absolutely.
Good job.
Wow. Very respectable, too. We love to see it. All right, next up.
You back again? Hold on, let me roll my sleeves up a little.
Let's be nicer this time.
No, I'm not going to be civil. Not with you.
Okay,
no.
well, I think this conversation is interesting. I think when you talk about longevity, you talk about the teams of what they won, who they played, I think you got to respect the era. I think the Chicago Bulls, I respect what they've done. I think Golden State, you respect what they've done. When it comes to playoffs, it talks about matchup. Everything's situational. Everything is about matchup. Let's talk about the matchup itself. Golden State's best versus Chicago's best. I don't think Chicago has played a team that does what Golden State does offensively. We talk about 2 guys in Steph Curry and Klay Thompson that constantly is running. The cardio is at a different level than they've ever seen. We're talking about a guy in Draymond Green that gets the ball off a pick and roll and can make any pass in the short roll, in the high roll. We're talking about a guy in Kevin Durant, which you just can't guard. He can get to his spots. And then you bring up Sean Livingston, the best mid-range shooter ever, off the bench, somebody who can come and give you buckets. And then on top of that, the collection of role players that they have, what they had an Ian Clark at one time, Festus Ezeli, Kevon Looney. I mean, this team, how do you guard a team like that when you have MJ, who is going to have to average 35, 40 points a game in that series? Now you have to tire him out on offense because defensively he has to chase Klay, he has to chase Steph, or he has to guard Kevin Durant. You can't just put him on Draymond. What is Dennis Rodman going to do in that series offensively? How are they going to look? I just think it's a mismatch because you have offensively a Golden State team that loves to move the ball around, a Golden State team that loves to move, gets the ball open. And with Chicago, they just played a style that fits more into the 90s, in an era where you need to put up a lot of threes, in an era where you need to match offensive ability. I don't think they could do that.
I think what we're missing, we're missing the point that you just mentioned, how good the Warriors were against the Cavs. How good were the Warriors against Memphis?
I'm thinking Houston, the Spurs.
Right, and I don't know if you know this, but the Bulls, 5 of their 6 championships,
amazing.
They beat 5 different teams.
Amazing.
So it's not like they only went up against one team.
I know
we're
what you
talking
mean.
about the Cavs, him having to run up against the Cavs. In order for them to win the NBA championship, they had to beat the Lakers.
Facts.
They had to beat the Trailblazers,
Facts.
who had a damn good team with Terry Porter and Drex and Jerome Kersey and Kevin Duckworth and Buck Williams and all-league defender that he was. And on top of that, they had to beat the Phoenix Suns, who also had a band of guys, and Dan Marley and Charles Barkley and all of these guys who they had who were very good at everything that they did. And then you move into the 1995-96 season when they had to play Seattle, who owned the Houston Rockets, which, by the way, Jordan was lucky enough that he ain't had to see Olajuwon in the playoffs, because if he had to, then that would have been a problem for him. But that Seattle team that they had a band of characters with Hersey Hawkins and Gary Payton and Nick McMillan and Sean Kemp. And then they had to move into play against the Utah Jazz. We're talking about a team who beat almost a whole division.
I mean, OG,
in order to win the NBA championship.
OG.
The amount of times that they did that.
OG, if you want to go band for band, we could do that. I mean, Golden State played the Memphis Grizzlies with Mike Conley, with Zach Randall, with Marc Gasol.
Yep.
They played the Houston Rockets with Chris Paul, with James Harden. They played Cleveland with LeBron, with Kyrie. We can go to the Spurs. They played Kawhi. They played LA. They played Pau Gasol. Like, this is a Golden State team that's played a plethora of talent. I mean, talk about Damian Lillard. They paid him and they swept him too. Without Kevin Durant, that's a crazy feat to do that.
Right.
Like, this is a team that's also played a collection of really good talent
100%.
in a West that's always been, in my lifetime, better than the East. We can even go back in the 90s. I think this West right now, what Golden State was in, you could say is more talented than the East in the 90s. So a team like Golden State, like I said, if you want to keep talking about their accolades, Golden State beat a plethora of really good to great teams. We can even talk about before Kevin Durant, when they beat that OKC team when they were down 3-1.
Right.
This team beat a lot of teams. When we talk about matchup for matchup and when they size up against each other, I mean, what's the man? You got Ron Harper guarding Steph.
Yes.
You got MJ guarding Clay.
Yep.
And then you got Scottie Pippen guarding Kevin Durant.
Right.
Now we're talking about Michael Jordan and Ron Harper seeing 35,000 screens in the game that they've never seen before in their life. They're going to be so puzzled, so fizzled. They're not going to know what to do.
I think you're throwing off the track that the triangle offense was a lot of action. There was a lot of
Offensively,
moving. So with that,
I'm with
we also have to guard against that too. So
That's
it's
a
not
fact.
like we're just running that offense. So we also have to guard against that too. So with us guarding against that, we know how to get around screens. We know how to slip screens. We know how to go under screens. But with all of that being said, the collection of we have to stay on point in what this was. And when I think about the Bulls run and what the Bulls did during that time, so having to beat the Knicks who they were favored, who was favored against them in 1993 in a 6-game dogfight, same Knicks team that in 1993 had won 27 straight games at home. They go into their building in the playoffs in the East Finals and beat them. That's almost impossible to do. And then you move into Phoenix when they beat them. It's a team that won 60 games. They beat them in their building for the NBA championship. Then you move into Seattle, how difficult. In Seattle, they beat them twice during the regular season. They had ended up beating them. The Utah Jazz, who came back the next season after they had beaten them, who were even better. And when they were better, they still ended up beating them. So when we're talking about having challenges, when you're talking about having to deal with tough stuff, I think that the Chicago Bulls, that run that they had during that time, when everybody thought that they were over, it was really impressive.
All right, we're actually going to move on to the next topic. But, judges, any updates? Who has the lead right now?
I mean, that one was very,
That was good.
very,
Yeah,
very
close.
close.
That was
very
hard fought.
close. I mean, for me, it's just tough. I felt like they were talking about a 3-year stint of the Warriors with Kevin Durant, while you were talking about 8 years where they won 6.
Yeah, they didn't
and
quite
then they
attack the
won 4.
pieces.
Also, if we're talking about injuries, was Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving not hurt during the 2015
Well, and how
finals
about
when they won?
Kawhi getting hurt against the Warriors?
Zaza Pachulia.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? Draymond had to put a hit out on Kawhi with Zaza in order to do that. So
Right.
I'm just saying.
Since we're on the subject of the 90s, I think one of the biggest problems that I have is that, people talk about the 90s being overrated. I don't think the 90s is overrated. I don't.
You got to hear that because your generation are the most nostalgic motherfuckers in the world. You guys evangelize everything. There wasn't mass media back then. You go on the TV, you had like 5 channels to choose from. You're watching Golden Girls, you're watching the news, or you're watching Chicago Bulls play. So because of that, the response to that you see from young people that are too disrespectful, too dismissive of what was around back then that actually has merit.
Yep.
It's all in response to the ridiculous pedestal that people that watched the game back then hold it to because of the memories they have associated with it that aren't rooted in logic. It's just purely emotional. All the reasons that exist today on why players are better today, teams are better today, that's all true. And maybe people take it too far to diminish what happened because naturally everything progresses. It all comes down.
I don't know if it's emotional because, we can talk fact. I think about the players that played in the 90s, the athlete that was in the 90s. There were some ridiculous athletes in the 90s. And since you're talking about media, I'm trying to imagine what the media looks like when they're talking about Charles Barkley, who from 1989 to 1993, he had, I think, 85. Yeah, he had 85, 30, and 10 games. That's more than KG. Right? So this is what's going on. Imagine if we're covering this guy every day. See, I was only able to see this once in a while. John Stockton, he had a 10-year, he had a 3-year stretch where he went 17 and 13, 17 and 14. That's a 6-to-1 assist to turnover ratio.
I'm glad
Imagine
you
if
bring
we
this up.
imagine if we got a dude running around in the NBA with a 6-to-1 assist to turnover ratio today, and we only see him like once or twice
You know what
a
would
year.
happen? You know what would happen?
Imagine if we had that going on.
If we had year-round media coverage of Charles Barkley, he'd be called a fat slob who can't play defense, a foul merchant,
You
a
mean like
transition
Luka?
merchant.
You mean like Luka?
Correct.
Who's at the? You mean like Luka?
Correct.
Who's at the top of the league? By the way,
You want to know
that
why?
guy.
You want to know why? We're talking about things being evangelized and things being
Right.
emotional. The mass media today and the fact that people can see everything.
Sure.
There's never been a crop of people in the world that are more more hatred in their heart than young fans today.
Right.
And they have all the reasons in the world to criticize players.
Right.
The reason these guys are revered so highly is because they didn't get to see enough of them.
Right.
They only got to see the peaks. They only got to see Barkley in the finals.
Right.
So it's, he's the finals guy, MVP guy. They don't get to criticize the weaknesses.
Sure.
Joel Embiid has more of all those stats you said than those guys you mentioned before.
Right.
Washes those guys offensive players. Washes not Kevin Garnett.
And I'm glad you brought that up.
And he's the most hated player of all goddamn time.
Actually, he's not, because he's still a top 5 player still. And like you just talked about,
You think
with
he's talking
Luka,
about it like this?
And you talking about Luka also. As much as we talk about Luka being a fat slob and Luka doesn't work on his game and Luka doesn't do this, Luka is still revered as one of the 3-4 best players in the game.
And imagine he played in the 90s. He wouldn't be called a fat slob. He'd be called White Jesus. He'd be called everything in the. He'd
Really?
be evangelized.
Right.
He'd be evangelized so much.
So he's evangelized like that today, only except we get to see him more, and you just talking bad about him. We still talk about him as a great player today, just like you would talk about Charles Barkley if he played today. Just like if you talk about a guy like Buck Williams, who was an all-league defender, if he played today. Just like you would talk about any of these other guys if they played today and they were, once again, if they were covered the way that they're covered back then. The way that they're covered today, it would be way different. So I'm trying to imagine what Olajuwon would look like today in today's game if he was covered as much as he was covered back then. I'm trying to imagine if Kevin Johnson, who's a 4-time All-League performer, Mark Price, what he would look like in today's game, or Penny Hardaway, how we would be covering those, how would we be talking about these guys today. I don't think that the game is overrated. I think that the game is actually underrated, because if you think about Anthony Edwards, who do we compare him to, right? If you think about Steph Curry, who do we compare him to? Magic. So when we talk about all of these guys, I don't think it's underrated. I don't think that it's revered as enough. But I don't want to go overboard with it.
Yeah.
I don't want to do
No, I
that.
see what you're saying. There's definitely pros and cons. Some guys who get more spotlight and less.
Sure.
But overall, you remember things fondly when you don't see the negatives as much. And these days, you see a whole lot of negatives go with the positives that really muddies things up. And history remembers the positives a lot more than negatives. So that is why people of that generation tend to overrate things and, give and take.
Fair enough.
How premeditated was the Golden Girls reference?
That was good. That was good. I said that on the podcast a few weeks ago.
What's up, brother? How you doing, my man? All right.
Good.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, before we start, I just have to address something you said. Joel Embiid is not top 5 in the world right now. You said that before. I just had to, I couldn't let that.
Well,
slide.
today.
Exactly.
Today.
Right now, I just can't let that slide.
And why?
I can't let that slide.
And why?
Because he doesn't play.
That's the only reason. Not
Listen,
because of his game.
We're aligned on that.
Yeah.
We're aligned on that.
Outcast wanna
We're
make
aligned on
sure,
that.
not because of his game.
But the 90s are overrated, and it's because of people from your generation. Because in every single field across the world, everybody can understand that as time goes on, things get better.
Sure.
You look at other sports, people say, yes, players today are different than what they were before. You always say they're bigger, faster, stronger. You look at technology. Technology today is much better than it was back then. You look at the way cars are made, the way people cook food, all of that stuff. Everybody acknowledges the way we do things today are largely better than what they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Except when we get to NBA basketball. When it gets to NBA basketball, now it's, we're not doing what they were doing in the 90s. And for a lot of people, I will say, whether they are young or old, they may not just know what they are looking at. Because if you look at 90s basketball, it is easier to score in 90s basketball than it is today. You can have a situation where you say, 1, 2, 3, 4, you go over there, I'm gonna play one-on-one here, and if I can get by my guy, I can score. You don't have to play zone defense. You don't have to worry about a guy shading over here or defenses being so set up to stop you. Right. And as time goes on, you look at numbers, you look at analytics, and you figure out, this is a better way to get more points on the board in this 48-minute span than what we were doing 20 years ago. Right. And everybody can acknowledge that, except for people who are just obsessed with the 90s.
Well, I think that it can be a little bit pretentious, but with that being said, it is a little bit overboard because you say stuff like the athlete is better today than it was in the 90s. I mean, I was watching Kenny Smith in 1990 throw the ball between his legs and dunk the ball off the backboard backwards at 6'3" in 1990. That was going on, right? I was watching Terrence Stansbury do 360s from the dotted line off of one leg. These are athletes, and that was going on, and that's one of the biggest problems that we have with today. The athlete is better today than what it was back then. When we had superior athletes like Sean Kemp, we had superior athletes like Xavier McDaniel, we had superior athletes like Charles Barkley, who was considered a fat slob, but that wasn't going on back then as fast as he was running and as high as he was jumping. These kind of guys were superior athletes, and that's the thing that you guys harp on the most. The athlete is better. The skill set was better. Isaiah Thomas had a ridiculous handle. Isaiah Thomas was incredible at getting by by guys and getting to the rim. Mark Price is another guy who played pick and roll and pick and pop and was fantastic at it. And his game would translate, because that's the thing that I think about the most when I think about these guys back then. Whose game can translate from back then to today? When I watch Bam Adebayo, that's Buck Williams. When I watch Bam Adebayo, that's Buck Williams right there. And I don't mean that that's him specifically, but he reminds me a lot of Buck Williams when I watch him. Every time I watch his game, how he is around the rim, the defender that he is, the glass cleaner that he is, how he is in the mid-post. Buck Williams actually toned his game down when he was with the Portland Trailblazers, because he was an 18-10 guy to play a different role, to be a defender. Now, if I'm doing that today, and in today's game, is how much space that we have out here, I think it's way different than what it is back then.
And listen, shout out Buck Williams. You know what I'm saying? But if you all the comparisons and all the era stuff, it can't just go one way. You can't just say, oh, what would they do back like how would a 90s player look today? You can take people from today and say they can play in the 90s. You can say, if you put Steph Curry right now in 1992, the way that he moves around, it's different. Like, there's so many skill sets today that if you put back then, they wouldn't know what to do, and they would be the ones who revolutionized the game.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right.
What's up, brother? What's going on, brother?
Doing good. So, when I think about the 90s basketball, great product. It is what it is for that time. Key point, it is what it is for that time.
Right.
They just got done doing crack back then. Naturally, you're not better than what we have going on right now, just with the way times of all things are going. We shoot better, we play faster, we play better, rebound better. Everything is just naturally better.
It's just naturally better based on just the time. That's
time.
That's
time.
essentially what
It's
you're saying.
time, and
so it's based on the time. Even though with the stuff that was going on then, it could translate to today. So not everybody was on drugs back then, just so you know.
A lot of them were, though.
I just want to make sure that we clear. Not everybody was on drugs back then. And the guys who were on drugs were pretty damn good, even being on drugs. Holy shit. So it's not like these dudes were just keeling over. No, that's not what was going on. The guys who were on drugs, to your point, were really damn good. But I want to make sure that I get back to the point that if you have something that was older and now it's here today,
yes,
it can be updated. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to get away from how good guys are today. I think Giannis would destroy the 90s. I don't think he would be good in the 90s. I think he would destroy the 90s. But I can also say Hakeem Olajuwon would destroy this era. I think he would kick ass in this era.
That's fair.
Because his game translates. I think that the guys whose game translates the most, that's why they're all-time greats. That's why I think about Penny Hardaway and Gary Payton and Mark Price and Jason Kidd and guys like Grant Hill. I think that their guys translate to today's game the most, and because it translates to today's game, because of the athlete that they are, because of the skill set. And on top of that, I think we completely leave out that these guys coming into the game, they wouldn't just still be what they are. They would adapt to the game. So
you really think so?
100%. Okay, because I can't shoot, I'm gonna see guys who can shoot.
That's a wild hypothetical.
Not.
I can't lean that
way.
No, it's not.
I
go by with what I see on paper.
Right.
On court. If you could shoot back then, you would show me you could shoot.
Right.
Jordan couldn't do that back then. He was shooting at 31, 32%
All you talking about is the long ball line. Just so you know, it's a huge floor. And I'm not just shooting at the long ball line. I'm shooting in the mid-range, which Jordan had a money mid-range game. That was his game, in fact. Not only was that his game, him getting to the rim, scoring over bigs.
Just because you can hit mid-range don't mean that you have the ability to shoot from the three-point line. DeMar DeRozan has that exact same skill set when it comes to shooting. He's not a three-point shooter.
Which is the worst logic that I've ever heard in my whole life when I hear you dudes talk about DeMar DeRozan.
I'm just talking about shooting aspects.
Right, and we're talking about shooting aspects because I hear you dudes talk about DeMar DeRozan like Jordan would be DeMar DeRozan in today's game. Who is the closest thing in you guys' estimation to Michael Jordan? Kobe Bryant, and not one of you would say DeMar DeRozan and Kobe Bryant in the same sentence.
I'm just talking about the logic of shooting the ball and assuming that you have the ability to shoot.
And I'm not saying that. And that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that a guy in DeMar DeRozan who has now put the three ball in his game.
It's not good still, but
it might be. It's respectable where he will shoot the three. Jordan could shoot the three. We saw 6 threes in one game, right? We saw him knocking down 3. Yes, 100%.
Dante DiVincenzo shoots 9 a game.
Yes, sir. 100%.
Dante shoots 9.
Yes, and Jordan would have to shoot more threes, no doubt about that.
And he's not hitting most of them. That's why scalability between the two.
And neither are all of the other guys. So when you're talking about elite guys, I mean, Jason Tatum shoots 12. How many of them is he hitting?
Probably 8 of them.
No, he's not getting Tatum. Hell no.
I didn't believe that in a
No,
second. But when
absolutely.
it comes to scalability and what these guys in today's game could do compared to the limitations that these guys from the 90s have, naturally they're going to be able to do more because they were brought up to do more.
Right.
The 90s guys, all you can do is assume. But along with that assumption, you have to take with what you see out there on the court. There are only like, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe 10 guys who were truly like ahead of their time in terms of how they played. That's a fair assumption. But with guys like Jordan, any other elite offensive player, it's hard for me to see that. Magic Johnson, it's hard for me to see that and assume that he could do what guys like
I don't
Jokic is
know
doing.
why. I really don't know why.
It's just harder.
All right, Mo.
Yep.
Shout out scalability.
Scalability, evangelize.
We meet again, OG.
Uh-oh. What's going on, brother? Yes, sir.
So I want to start this debate by laying the ground rules of the debate. I believe that all the great players back then would be great today for the most part. So I'm not trying to debate about the great players. I want to debate about the premise of the average NBA player today is better than the average NBA player in the 90s.
Interesting. So I'm not thinking about just average players. I'm thinking about like guys who were in other positions. Like, for example, I think Otis Thorpe would be great in today's game, just as a dirty work guy. He's good in the mid-post. I think he was a great defender. I think he was a great rebounder. And what Isaiah Stewart does for the Detroit Pistons, he could do that for a championship contending team or a playoff team. And on top of doing that, I think he would be even better because I think he was a better offensive player than Isaiah Stewart.
So I think we can agree that players back then that were good probably will be good here. So I'm not
Yes.
trying to disrespect those players back then.
Sure.
But I am trying to argue that there was a dilution in the product back then because starting from 88, they expanded. And up until 95, they expanded to 6 total teams.
Sure.
You had the Grizzlies, you had the Heat, you had the Hornets, you had the Timberwolves, you had the Raptors, and you had the Timberwolves. All for the most part, half of those teams right now still are bad NBA franchises. So you could only imagine in the 90s, most of them weren't good. Outside of the Magic, none of them had immediate success. I think when you have 6 new NBA teams introduced in an era, you automatically get worse NBA players on those teams. I think right now the NBA desperately needs an expansion because there are too many good NBA players. We see what Quentin Grimes is doing with the 76ers right now. He's averaging 25-plus points per game. Back then in the 90s, you didn't have Quentin Grimes that bounce around teams and can average 20 a night.
Interesting, because number one, the Heat showed up in '88. They were in the playoffs 4 years later. They were in the Eastern Conference Championship in '97.
That's a good franchise.
Which
Yep.
is 9 years later. The Minnesota Timberwolves, I'll give you that. The Orlando Magic, we already talked about. We already talked about them. Charlotte, who ended up
joke.
Yeah, Charlotte. Well, they weren't a joke back then because I mean they had the number.
They had a
one
good
pick.
run.
Not only did they have a good run,
Yep.
I mean they drafted well. They beat the Boston Celtics and ended that franchise. Ended their run. So Charlotte. Let's see, the Miami Heat. Let's see. Orlando. So teams like that. So teams like that. It wasn't of the 5 teams. That's 60% of them that were actually really
It was
good.
6. We have the Raptors. We have the Grizzlies. So
Right.
both of those teams at first were very bad
They
teams.
had no idea what they were doing with the Grizzlies. That's why they ended up folding. So I mean, I can't count them. But with that being said, they also had players on that team who weren't bad. I mean, Big Country Reeves, Shaq would tell me all the time how much of a difficult time he had with Big Country Reeves. He is the same one that when he retires, he's gonna say, this guy was he gave me the most problems. That's Joel Embiid. When Joel Embiid retires, he's gonna say, Al Horford gave me hell. I promise you that.
Now, in 98-99, the team with the best offensive rating was the Indiana Pacers with the 110 offensive rating.
Sure.
Right now, that would rank bottom 10 in the NBA in terms of offensive rating. Offensive rating now has exploded, and it's exploded since the 2000s.
Yep.
It's even better than the 90s. I'm looking at the average NBA player today. They need to have more skills to play and be in a rotation than back then.
Yep.
Back then, you can have one role. You could either defend really well, rebound really well, maybe shoot, maybe pass. Now, you have to have a combination of at least 3 of them.
Sure, but the offensive rating really quickly doesn't really work for me because the Golden State Warriors in 2015, 2016 had the best offense in NBA history. They'd be at the bottom of the league today. In 2025, it would be the worst offense in the NBA today.
So imagine just how much better it is than the 90s.
Fair enough.
Let's go. OG.
All right, next topic.
Well, it's interesting. We were talking about the Golden State Warriors adding Kevin Durant and how much better he made them. But I think about what the Celtics were doing and how much better Bird was because I think Bird's better than KD.
Larry Bird better than Kevin Durant. This one's spicy. I love this one.
This is a good one.
Do not compare.
I need to be
Ben
sold
Simmons.
on Larry, so I'm excited for this.
Kevin Durant,
Sure.
3-level scorer, the best scorer in the history of the game. Can play make, maybe not as well as Larry Bird. The defender. They don't talk about Kevin Durant, the defender. Pretty great rim protector, and although the Golden State Warriors were already an elite defense before him, think about what he brought to them as a rim protector. He was an all-NBA level defender when he was with the Golden State Warriors. Now, Larry Bird is an all-time great. No one's going to deny that. Second, third best small forward in the history of the game. But when you look at the object of the game, nobody's better than Kevin Durant.
I think what you mentioned when you talked about scoring, I mean, Bird at his peak, he was 27, 10, and 6. That was 5 years where he did that. And you talk about how wildly efficient Kevin Durant was. I mean, Bird was a 50, 40, 90 guy. In 1988, I mean, he averaged 30 and 10 on almost 30 and 10 on 50, 40, 90. I mean, when you talk about the versatility of Larry Bird, how much better of a distributor he was, how much better of a glass cleaner that he was. You talk about how great Kevin Durant was as a defender and a rim protector. Just so you know, Larry Bird's an all-league defender.
He was.
Larry Bird wasn't just a good defender; he was an all-league defender when he played in the NBA. Now he was more of a team defender, which I think that resonates with me. I care about you as a one-on-one defender, and I care about how good you are as a one-on-one defender.
Fair enough.
But how do you affect your unit? And I feel like Larry Bird affected his unit, not just with his one-on-one defense, but his passing lane defense, his ability to help off the weak side. Not just that, but people don't talk about rebounding nearly as much. Bird was a double-digit rebounder.
He was.
And with him being that, and as a passer, and on top of that, him in the meat and potatoes of games, asking for the ball, not just asking for the ball, delivering. I mean, he's got a winning record in the playoffs. He's got a winning record in closeout games. Bird was fantastic.
He was. Now, when you look at Kevin Durant and his ability to score the basketball, we already talked about it. 3-level scoring, the most efficient basketball player we've ever seen. But I just can't help but think about, he joined the Golden State Warriors. He joined a team that already had a unanimous MVP.
Sure.
And he immediately became the best player on the team. You're talking about back-to-back finals against the best player we've ever seen in both of our opinions. We believe that LeBron James is the best ever.
That's what I do.
To go in both of those series and to outperform LeBron James, to be the best player in both of those series, to have the game-sealing moment basically identical year after year in that Game 3 in Quicken Loans, to go ahead and hit that 3 over LeBron James to basically seal the series. There's not many players in NBA history that are going up against. Well, I'll give Bird his credit, because what I'm going to say is incorrect. Because Larry Bird has an undefeated record against Michael Jordan, but that was before Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan. That was before he really was a true basketball genius. That was just a kid who was just out there just being better than everybody else. You had peak LeBron James at the peak of his powers, and Kevin Durant was going tit for tat with him, and at times outperforming him.
Sure. Now, I think what you discount is the step back that Steph Curry took. Like, Steph Curry didn't have to take a step back.
Definitely.
He could have definitely,
underrated part of him.
When Kevin Durant got on that crew,
Agreed.
still said, yo, I really don't need you, because I did this without you.
That's not true. He cried in the car. He said, come please, KD, I'm begging you.
Here's the difference, though. I actually did it before I got you. That doesn't, I'm not going to say that negates that I needed you, but I did get
against a hurt
I did
Cavaliers
get there,
team.
and I did get there, though. Whether they were beat up or not, I did get
that
there.
That 2017 was the healthiest Cavaliers.
And on top of that, I did it after you left, which means that I didn't really need you as much as you needed me. So I can't discount the fact that what Steph Curry getting on that crew, with Kevin Durant got on that crew, him saying, I'm going to let you be KD. I'm not going to argue that. But what I am going to argue is, and I actually did some research on this too, about Jordan saying that he wouldn't have minded having Larry Bird on his team, because he wasn't comfortable with Bird kicking his ass.
Come on.
100% he wasn't comfortable with that. But with that also being said, Bird being the player that he was in the playoffs, not just Bird being the player that he was in the playoffs, being the player that he was in the regular season and bringing it every night and showing how much better he was by winning the league MVP, not once, not twice, but 3 straight years, and being an all-league defender within that time and playing at that level consistently. I think that Larry Bird, just as an all-around player, he was better than Kevin Durant.
The one part of Larry Bird's game that I think that it's not a question when you compare against KD, I think, is the playmaking. But even still, I feel like that's an underrated part of Kevin Durant's game, especially his ability in transition, especially his ability.
The reason why it's underrated, Drew, because it's not that good.
That's not necessarily true. I think that obviously he's an elite, arguably the best isolation basketball player in the game, especially when you consider height, everything into account.
Sure.
But again, when you
are as great as you are offensively, especially scoring the basketball.
Right.
When we've had seasons of him averaging over 6 assists, we've had seasons of him averaging over 7 assists.
Right.
And again, the defensive versatility, you mentioned all the reasons why Larry Bird's a great defender. On top of the fact that Kevin Durant can do basically everything that Larry Bird could defensively, as an athlete, it's not comparable. It's Kevin Durant.
I don't know if he could do everything that Bird could do defensively, because if he could, then, like I said, Bird being the weak side defender that he was, Bird being the rebounder that he was. I mean, these
Kevin
things
Durant's
add
a
up.
great rebounder.
He wasn't Bird, though.
For the era, I'm not going to say you're wrong, but
Right, absolutely, especially in the meat and potatoes of games, coming up with big rebounds, diving on the floor for loose balls and things like that. I mean, he just didn't do that. He didn't bring to the game what he did. Now, I won't argue that Kevin Durant as a bucket getter was what he was.
There's nobody on his level.
I won't argue that, but I feel like overall, everything that Larry Bird did and playing with the collection of guys that he played with, which enhanced his game, I just feel like he was a better player.
when the
than
Golden
Kevin
State
Durant.
Warriors gave him his opportunity to do what he did better than anybody else in NBA history, there was no team that stood a chance. That includes our GOAT, LeBron James, in 2017 and 2018. 2018, LeBron went for 51 points. He was excellent. It did not matter. Kevin Durant being so overwhelmingly great, especially adding that to an already dominant team in the Golden State Warriors, it made things unfair. When you get a player like Kevin Durant, when he has the ability to just go out there and get buckets, we saw what can happen, and that's being unstoppable.
Fair enough.
Hey, OG. Appreciate
Absolutely,
you.
brother. Yep.
Close to the double shot clock violation. I was excited.
Yes, sir.
I feel like you're being way too disrespectful to Kevin Durant. We're talking about easy money sniper. We're talking about a 7-footer who can handle like a guard, who can shoot like one of the best shooters on the planet. Now, I understand Larry Bird and everything he's done, but he came into the
think
league.
you do.
And yes, I do. Because he played with Dennis Johnson. He played with Robert Parrish. He played with Kevin McHale. He played with Danny Ainge. He had a great roster. I'm looking at Kevin Durant after his rookie year. He went on the run where he averaged 30, 30, 30, and 30. 2014, MVP, 77% at the rim. He led a team to the NBA Finals. Now, I will say, I wouldn't choose him to lead my army. I think he's more of a mercenary for hire.
I would
and
choose Bird, though.
And we saw, I agree, but we saw what he did with Golden State outdueling LeBron James, and we know in 2021, if his foot isn't on the line, the Nets beat the Bucks in Game 7, and they go to the NBA Finals and they win. That year, they didn't win because of injuries. I just look at KD and what he had to deal with, especially early on in OKC. Can you name me the starting lineup for OKC?
The OKC starting lineup.
The year they made the NBA Finals.
Yeah, they made the finals. You had Russ, you had Serge Ibaka, you had Roberson. No, Roberson wasn't on the crew. You had Russ, you had KD, you had Ibaka, you had, I think Kendrick Perkins was on that. Yeah, and Cephalosha.
That's the 5.
Yep.
Does that compare to any of the teams Larry Bird had with the Celtics?
Hey, man, like my grandmother always told me, anybody can train a secretary. You can screw him up, too, though, just so you know. Let's make sure that we clear on that, because just because he had a bomb squad does not mean it would have worked. And Bird made that crew so much better. Let's make sure that we're clear that in 1981, when they won the NBA championship, Bird was in year 2. Kevin McHale was a rookie. So he's leading this crew to the NBA championship. He's the best player on that team. No, he didn't win the Finals MVP. That went to Cedric Maxwell. But now we're moving.
So he didn't win Finals MVP?
No, he did not win the Finals MVP.
KD went to the Warriors and won Finals MVP 2 years in a row with Steph, a unanimous MVP on his roster.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because if you remember that series in 2017, if you think about what Steph Curry did, he almost averaged a triple-double in the NBA Finals
KD
in
was
20.
better. KD was better.
Are we sure about that?
Yes, I'm sure.
He went 26, 10, and 7 during
both
that. During that
playoff series, in both final series, he hit the dagger.
Yes, hitting the dagger does not mean that you're better. Just because you hit the last shot does not mean that you're better.
Well, he was better than Steph.
So Steph
he averaged 30
Steph took
on
a step,
50-40-90.
Steph took a step back in order to let KD do
and
what
why
he
did
was
he
doing.
take a step back?
He took a
because
step back.
He knows KD's better.
But he needed KD to be KD. That doesn't mean that KD was better. He needed KD to be KD.
So you think Steph is better than KD?
I do think that Steph is better than KD.
All right.
100%.
I just want to stay on the argument of Larry Bird,
Yes,
because
sir.
I don't defensively. You can have the numbers of defensive teams. I think most of that was due to reputation, because no way Larry Bird cannot jump 2 feet off the ground.
Amen.
Kevin Durant can. He's way more athletic. You talk about a prime KD that could get to the basket, finish 77% at the rim, 50% mid-range shooter. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, outside of passing that Larry Bird does better than Kevin Durant.
I think it's interesting you said that he can't jump 2 feet off the ground. Meanwhile, he's spinning on the baseline on Dennis Rodman and reverse dunking on him in the playoffs. That's going on. So I think that's a little bit higher than 2 inches off the ground. That's going on. With that also being said, as a player, as a playmaker, as a passer, as a distributor, as a rebounder, how smart Larry Bird was. I remember Larry Bird specifically saying, you see the game 2 steps ahead. Now, when I think about a guy thinking the game like that, that tells me that that's a genius. I see the game 2 steps ahead, where I see this guy going to be there, and he's going to be there, and when it works out when it works out like that, it works out exactly the way you did, exactly the way you think it works. That's a basketball IQ that you can't teach.
Judges, how did that round go? Let's start from this side this time.
Yeah, I think that was a dog versus dog battle is what you guys were it comes down to. And I think OG was explaining Larry Bird had the dog and KD's dog was a puppy in comparison.
I didn't hear the hate of Bird. We got to hear some hate. There's no hate.
This is the most respectable one they've done
You're
yet.
the hater. You got to hate.
That's true. No?
I mean, look, it's tough for me just because I watched Kevin Durant my entire life. I can't say that I watched too much of Bird. He had a broken back on the sideline, laying on the floor in what was that, 93, OG? 92? So it's tough for me because I seen KD, and I want to say that he's better, but I can't help but wish that this was 2K. We could turn injuries off and have Larry Bird have a 20-year career like KD's going to have and see what that would look like. So it's tough.
Tim Duncan is the best power forward in NBA history.
Do y'all have any idea how good he was? We're about to find out.
100% disagree. Didn't you a second ago say that Giannis would destroy in that era?
That doesn't mean he's the best
Giannis
ever,
would
though.
murder him. Tim Duncan plays like an old guy. At his age, how is he going to guard Giannis on the perimeter? He can't. All he has is that old man mid-range that I've seen at LA Fitness a million times. Give Giannis the ball against him, it's over.
Sure. It's interesting you bring up that old man game at LA Fitness. Can you stop that guy?
Yeah.
No,
you can.
can't. No, you can't.
Yeah,
that
you
guy is
can.
kicking your ass. In fact, not only is he kicking your ass, you're trying to figure out how is he kicking your ass.
I've
Meanwhile,
kicked his ass
you're
before.
trying to
I just
figure
run to
out
the
why
paint.
it's the 3rd or the 4th time you've been on the sideline because y'all lost to them again because you can't stop the running hook that he has or you can't stop the mid-range that he has, which is what Tim Duncan had. So as good as Giannis is, and I'm not going to argue that Giannis wouldn't destroy the 90s, but Tim Duncan had a game, I think, that was very similar. I think that he had a game that was very simple. And because it was very simple, like in the words of Kawhi Leonard, slow as pro. And as simple as his game was, it didn't matter who he was going up against. You're not going to take him out of what he does. You're not going to make him do anything that he doesn't want to do, and you're not going to push him around because that's who Tim Duncan was, a glass cleaner, an elite defender, who, by the way, right from the beginning, right from the door, because you brought up Giannis. I don't know if you know this, but Tim Duncan in year 2, he was leading the team to the NBA championship with Mario Elie, who was on his 6th team in 8 years. Okay, of course you don't know who that is. Jerome Kersey, who was on his 4th team in 4 years. Avery Johnson, who was on his 5th team in 7 years. And let's see, Malik Rose, who was in year 3 at that point. So guys, these are the guys he's taken to the NBA championship. Meanwhile, he's doing this in year 2, who, by the way, he also did in year 1. He was first team All-Pro. So right from the beginning, when I come into the league, I'm that for the duration of my career.
That's really ridiculous. I don't even think he was the best player on his team at any point in his career.
I don't think you believe that, but
I know that.
Who was better than him? An older David Robinson?
Yes.
Well, he wasn't better than him.
He was Tony Parker, Kawhi Leonard. He got backpacked so many years.
If Tony Parker was better, if Tony Parker was better than him, explain to your boys over here why in the 2003 NBA Finals the word was out that Tony Parker was going to get traded for Jason Kidd at that time. This is your starting point guard, but he was better than Tim Duncan, who dismantled the 3-time back-to-back-to-back NBA champion Los Angeles Lakers. Meanwhile, we're talking about Tony Parker getting shipped out and they replacing him with Jason Kidd. They wasn't doing that with Tim Duncan. That wasn't going on.
All right. Thank you for volunteering as tribute, Joe. Someone had to do it.
Well done, Joe.
Yeah,
Well done.
it's a tough one.
Great job. Yo, Dels.
Next Brave Soul.
I believe in you. We believe in you. You can cook.
OG.
Dell's back again.
OG. Listen, OG. I love laying groundwork.
Sure.
You want to talk accolades? You want to talk, all-time where they rank? Tim Duncan's got it. You know what I mean? The championships he's got, he's on some all-time great teams and all-time great coach. He's got things that Giannis right now in his career doesn't have. But if we talk player for player, it's a lot closer than you're led to believe. Because right now, this version of Giannis, who's shooting, 48% from the rim, in the mid-range, we know he's one of the most dominant players at the rim, and he's a better playmaker than Tim Duncan as well. So if you're taking all of that, and defensively, listen, Tim Duncan's one of the greatest defenders of all time. You can make the argument the greatest, right? I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. Giannis might not be in that conversation, but I think the gap offensively, Giannis averaging 30 a game. Tim Duncan wasn't doing that.
No, he wasn't. With him not averaging 30 a game, he did do what was necessary. So we got a guy who's in a big man league with Shaq running around, with Olajuwon running around, with all of these great bigs running around, he's playing at a level where if you need me to only average 19, I can do that. But if you need me to average 25 a game, I can do that too. Because he did that when he won the league MVP. That ended up happening. So he did that. And by the way, this is the slowest era in NBA history. If we're playing in a fast era, which is conducive to Tim Duncan's game, because I don't think you give Tim Duncan nearly as much credit as a transition player. And as a guy
Giannis is better.
And I'm not going to argue that part.
Not close.
No, I won't argue.
Okay.
I just don't think you can give. I don't think you give Tim Duncan enough credit as the transition player that he is, and not just that, but a guy who can stretch the defense and play in the mid range. We're praising Giannis for playing in the mid range. That was Duncan's game.
It was.
That's where he played at. We're praising Giannis for averaging. We're praising Giannis for being a bucket getter. Tim Duncan, that was his game on the box.
Well, that's not fair, OG. That's not fair because Giannis came into the league a very raw prospect. This is a 19-year-old kid. He was skin and bones. He had a very
sounds like a you problem.
He had a very limited game.
I know,
but we're talking right now peak for peak. Tim Duncan. We're not talking about who's the better prospect. We're talking about who the better NBA player is. Right now, Giannis at his peak. And there's one thing interesting that you said. You said Tim Duncan does what he has to do. Well, Giannis doesn't have that luxury. He wasn't playing with Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Greg Popovich. He was playing with Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. Just shout out to them, some great players. But the teams that he was playing on, he had to average 30. He had to have 50 in a game 6 to close out. He had to block shots.
Absolutely.
Tim Duncan, he had this great team around him. He had to do, I could give you 50 tonight. I'll give you 25 tonight. Giannis got to go out there every single night and be the best player, else they're losing.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Dale. Who is Tony Parker in 2003? You have no idea who he is.
Well, what do you mean? He's an all-time player, all-NBA type player.
No, in 2003, in year 2, no, he is not.
Okay,
right?
but what about Manu?
Kevin Willis. Okay.
What about?
Okay, Manu.
Okay.
Do you know who Manu is in 2003?
He was a great player.
You don't know who he is, though.
He was a great player.
He just got there. You have no. So all of these guys are unproven guys. Tim Duncan throws this crew on his back. And since you brought up Giannis going for 50, I don't know if you remember this, but Tim Duncan in Game 6 of the NBA Finals against the New Jersey Nets, he went 20, 20, 10, and almost 10. That's a quadruple double
wasn't 50,
in the closeout game.
Shout out to Tim Duncan, man. I tried.
What's up, OG?
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
All
Y'all
right.
think y'all trying to trick me with the pretty face. I'm ready. I'm ready.
So, you agree LeBron James is the greatest player of all
I
time,
think
right?
he's the best ever.
Would you say he's the greatest at every position of all time? I think he's the greatest point guard, greatest shooting guard, greatest small forward, greatest power forward, and greatest center. I think he's a better center or power forward than Tim Duncan.
Based on what?
Everything.
No, you can't just say everything. That's like saying
That's
because
my king.
That's like
I'm gonna support my king.
Oh, sure, but that's like saying because I said so. Because I said so isn't an answer.
Is that not an argument?
No,
because I
absolutely
said
no.
so.
When
I say LeBron is my king.
Now,
He's the
that's
best at every
fair
single
enough.
position.
That-
he has songs written about him.
Yes, he
okay.
does. Uh-huh.
Have you ever listened to Bronify?
I have never listened to Brown
Okay, well, you
Fire.
should hop on
I
there.
should probably listen to Brown Fire.
Yes.
However, I mean, because I said so isn't an answer. Because if I say so, I mean, I could say something wild as hell, and because I say so, I guess it's true. No, I mean, as good as, like I said, as good as LeBron James is, and I think LeBron James is fantastic. He's the best player that I've ever seen. But at the power forward spot, being able to glass clean, being able to do the dirty work, being able to switch defenders, being able to cover against bigs, being able to rebound in traffic against bigs, being able to deal with guys like Shaq, being able to deal with guys like
I feel like he
Olajuwon.
could do all that.
I think that he could do all of that. Tim Duncan did do all of that, though. I think that's the difference. So because Tim Duncan did all of that, I mean, I think that there's a separation between the two.
All right, I got cooked.
She was kind of up to something with LeBron. Because LeBron is positionless.
Yes, he
and
is.
if you're telling me that he is my power forward, he's better than Tim Duncan, no doubt. But let's not even go that route. Let's stay with Giannis. Because you diminished Manu, you diminished Tony Parker. But Tony Parker in 2007, which was still pretty much peak of Tim Duncan's powers as well, that's finals MVP against baby LeBron.
Yep.
2013, who would have been the finals MVP if the Spurs had won? It would not have been Tim Duncan.
It would have been Danny Green.
No, it would not have.
It
Just
would've been
because
Danny
he had the
Green.
3-point
It would've been
record,
Danny
don't
Green.
lie.
It would
It
not
would
have
have been
been
Tony
no, it
Parker.
was Danny
You
Green.
know the answer. You diminished 2003 Tony Parker.
Danny
You
Green.
know the answer is Tony Parker in
It
2013.
was real talk.
Bu-
It was real conversation.
Mike
That was Danny Green.
Budenholzer was his head coach when he went for 50 in a closing game in the NBA Finals.
Sure.
Greg Popovich is arguably the best ever.
Yep.
Arguably the best ever. He had the luxury of having arguably the best coach of all time for the entirety of his career. Now, Bruce Bowen, you know the game better than I do, OG. I'll shake your hand and tell you that right now. But the truth of the matter is, Bruce Bowen is still an all-time great defender, one of the best defenders we've ever
He
seen.
wasn't in 2003. Neither was Tony Parker.
But what
Neither
about
was
his
Manu
first
Ginobili.
championship?
Neither was
What
Steve-
about his
neither
first
was Steven
championship?
Jackson. And by the way, since you brought up Since you
What
brought
about
up
his
Greg-
first championship?
since
You keep talking about
since
2003.
you brought up-
If you're saying
I'm glad you brought up-
2003 is peak Tim Duncan,
I'm glad
how
you-
about Giannis and when he was Defensive Player of the Year and MVP? There's only been 3 players in NBA history, OG. You know them better than I do. LeBron James, Hakeem Olajuwon, Michael Jordan, and of course Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's rare company. That's Giannis
100% rare
Antetokounmpo.
company.
And that's with Mike Budenholzer as his head coach.
Now remember, that's in 2021. I think Giannis is in year 8 when that was going on. So Tim Duncan in year 2 when he's got.
After how many years of college?
4 years of college.
Oh, okay.
100%.
Got it.
So, because everybody who comes out of college is awesome when they get to the NBA and they go into the NBA Finals and win the Finals MVP.
Hey, LeBron was, and
I
she
can't
made a good
forget-
point for him.
I can't believe I can't leave that out. But Tim Duncan, at that point in his career, again, he's taking Jerome Kersey. He's taking Avery Johnson. He's taking. I can't believe I'm saying this. He's taking Avery Johnson and Mario Elie and Jerome Kersey and Steve Kerr. He's taking them to the NBA Finals.
no, and David
you
Robertson.
don't know, and who's got a bad back. You don't know who these guys are in 2003, and you don't care about Malik Rose.
Who
you
is
don't.
Giannis's number 2? Chris Middleton.
Chris Middleton,
Okay. Now,
who he
there-
had for
there-
8 years. Let's make
and
sure
Chris
we're clear on
Middleton
that.
was a
Right.
career playoff choker until 2021.
The same Chris Middleton, who's an All-Star, by the way.
Okay, so we're
Let's
going to
make
go by
sure.
All-Stars. So
Let's make
Tony
sure.
Parker, Manu Ginobili.
Parker wasn't an All-Star in 2003.
You
Neither
keep
was
bringing
Manu
up
Ginobili.
2020. 2003 isn't the only year they played together, OG.
But 2003 is the year that they dismantled
Giannis
the
as an
Los
athlete,
Angeles Lakers.
Giannis as a scorer,
three-time
Giannis
NBA
as a
champion.
playmaker, Giannis as a defender. I'll give it to of course, Tim Duncan, but he was a DPOY. Come on.
I want to say I thought the point about Giannis is not being fair to Giannis because he came into the league an underdeveloped prospect. Before Tim Duncan went to Wake Forest, he was an aspiring swimmer. You know what I mean? He wasn't even thinking about basketball. That was like in his high school years. So for him to go from swimming on an island.
That's a hobby. Like swimming is my thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this basketball.
He was, you know what, let me pick up this basketball and go be first team All-NBA and win a championship. I don't know, hard to say, but it was a losing argument. Y'all knew it.
I think that's a tough argument. I think the haters need to think about what the fan says and think about, like, how can I pick it apart? And what I thought of was, what is even a power forward? Are there even power forwards? Hey, maybe Tim Duncan was actually a small forward. And now you're just trying to put him in this little hole. No one else is. How many power forwards are there? So, got to find a way into that argument because that one was tough to crack on that narrow definition.
I think the same way. I think you could have really started ripping how LeBron could have had him in that 4 spot, but on a general greater note, I'm glad we're giving the flowers to Malik Rose. That's a great basketball player who deserves his.
Kobe Bryant ain't a top 5 player all time. How about that? He's not.
How's that for a setup?
How about that?
Oh, let's
Kobe
go.
Bryant is not a top 5 player.
Nonchalant in the building.
And this dude is gonna argue for Kobe Bryant. He got a Boston Celtics sweater on.
All right, who's your top 5?
James, Jordan, Jabbar, Chamberlain, Russell.
Kobe Bryant had a stretch where he had 54 games in a row. You see James do that. Or Kobe's not as good as James, but you see Bill Russell do that. He doesn't. Bill Russell played in a league where there were 8 to 14 teams. He won a lot of those championships. He didn't have that competition. I mean, Kobe, they went back to back. They took down a good Celtics team in 2010, that big 3. They took down. Kobe had 81 points. That's the second most of all time.
So to your point, number one, Bill Russell, 4 years straight, he averaged 20 and 20 in the playoffs. These how many guys, except for Chamberlain, could say that they did that. Olajuwon, Jabbar, none of them dudes could say that. Chamberlain and Russell, the only 2 dudes could say that they won, and he still holds the record to this day for the most points and rebounds combined in Game 7. He went for 30 and 40. So your 81 that you were talking about, yeah, Bill Russell, he went for 30 and 40 in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. On top of that, he's still the 3rd all-time leading rebounder in NBA history. You talked about it being 8 to 14 teams. Well, 8 to 14 teams, that means that I have to see the tougher competition way more than I would normally. So if it's 8 to 14 teams in the league, instead of me having to see the Trailblazers, who are 3 games out of the play-in today, and they end up in the playoffs, instead of me having to see them in the first round of the playoffs, I got to see Oklahoma City in order to get to the NBA Finals. That's only a 1 playoff series. That's what I have to see immediately to get to the NBA championship. If I'm in the Eastern Conference, and instead of me having to see the Chicago Bulls to get to the NBA or Charlotte to get to the NBA Finals, I have to see Cleveland in order to get to the NBA Finals right from the beginning. So when you have less teams in the league, you have tougher competition that you have to see more, which means that you have to bring your game way more, which is why Bill Russell did what he did. On top of that, don't forget the 8 straight championships that he won, and he was the catalyst to that. They were 8-0 when he did that. The only time he lost, this is a guy who was in the league 13 years. 12 of those 13 years, he was in the NBA championship. The only time he wasn't was year 1.
There was less talent back then, though. You're talking about all these rebound sets, but there weren't as many centers that Bill Russell could rebound over.
Chamberlain was in the league.
Yeah, other than Chamberlain, there weren't as many centers that Bill Russell could rebound over. And then we have all these role players. The role players these days are so much better. There's competition on every single team. There's a player that is good all the time. And Kobe Bryant just literally annihilated every single one of those
Interesting
players.
that you mentioned that Bill Russell is just the talent level. Just so you know, Jerry West wasn't on the Celtics. Elgin Baylor was not on the Celtics. Wayne Embry was not on the Celtics. Oscar Robertson was not on the Celtics. Nate Thurman was not on the Celtics. I mean, I can go over a bevy of players. Jabbar was not on the Celtics, even though he didn't play against Bill Russell. But there's a bevy of players that played during that time that weren't on the Celtics, and they were winning. Yes, sir.
It's points for respecting the shot clock.
OG.
Yo.
What up, Mike?
What's up, brother? How you doing? You back again?
You gonna hate me.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Listen, I was over there sitting down, and I wanted to run by. Who was your top 5 again? Because you said, first of all,
James.
let's say this. RP Kobe. Who was your top 5?
James, Jordan, Jabbar, Chamberlain, Russell.
Chamberlain as in Wilt and Russell as in Bill, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, first of all, respect to MJ, respect to LeBron. Those are 1 and 2. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is solidified number 3. There is no way in hell you're putting plumbers over Kobe Bryant. There is no way in hell you're putting dudes that played before the 80s over Kobe Bryant. We're talking about Kobe Bryant, and Kobe Bryant gets so disrespected in this world because he didn't have the flashy numbers. People look at efficiency so much. People just refuse to go look at the tape of Bill Russell. I watched some of the tape. It's dreadful. It's actually horrible. I mean, I don't even know how you watch that basketball. The screen is all black and white. There is no three-point line. They really didn't do much in terms of skill level. But we're talking about Kobe Bryant. We're talking about a dude who came in at 17, 18 years old, played with Shaquille O'Neal, and played in probably the most rugged West we've ever seen in our lifetime in terms of playing against Dirk in Dallas, playing against Tim Duncan in San Antonio, running up against Steve Nash in Phoenix. I mean, the list goes on. Even Darren Williams in Utah Jazz, they had a little nice, cute squad. You know, Tim Duncan in San Antonio. I mean, nonstop competition after competition. And then on top of that, in the finals, I mean, I'm not even going to talk about Shaq and Kobe. I want to talk about what he did after. Because what he did after was more memorable. Going up against Boston, who built Paul Pierce, who had Ray Allen. They had Rondo. I mean, they had Kevin Garnett. You know how much great Kevin Garnett was. He probably was better than Bill Russell. I honestly prefer watching Kevin Garnett over Bill Russell. I don't want to watch Bill Russell, personally. But Kobe Bryant, to not be top 5 and to put Bill Russell over him, to put Wilt Chamberlain over. Did you see his 100-point game? No, you didn't, because it's not real. That's how I know you didn't see that game. Did you watch Bill Russell? I know you didn't watch Bill Russell, because there ain't really much to watch. Kobe Bryant, putting those two over him is honestly diabolical. And OG, you way smarter than that. You don't do that to yourself.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. So number one,
it's always interesting.
It's always
interesting.
100%.
You know?
So let's start the conversation.
Yeah, walk me through Will's fake stats.
Let's start with the NBA not having the gumption to have a fake 100-point game. Like, why would they?
You seen it?
Why would they fake something like that? First
Did
of
you
all,
see it?
No, I didn't see it.
Is it proof?
Yes, it's proof.
Where?
It was
How
played.
haven't you seen OG? Your name is OG. You all.
I wasn't around when that game was played. I was not around when that game was played.
We can find everything else.
Yeah, we can. But
we can find tape from World War II.
And you have.
But we can't find that 100-point game.
You can find tape of it. You don't have videotape, but there's audio tape of it.
Audio.
Yes,
I got to hear it.
There's audio tape.
Hear he had 100.
Yeah, because first of all, the game was moved.
No, listen. I'm just trying to break it down.
All I know is that the game was moved. So the game was moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania. Right.
Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Yes, Hershey, Pennsylvania. This is where the NBA was. And since you're talking about Kobe Bryant, who by the way,
one of the best ever.
Yeah, no doubt about it, one of the best ever. And if you think that Kobe Bryant is anywhere between 7 and 11,
where do you have him?
I got him at 11. That's why I have him.
A what?
Yes, I have him outside the top 10. Yes,
11.
James,
Keep
Jordan,
going.
Jabbar, Chamberlain, Russell, Magic, Bird, Duncan, Olajuwon, Diesel.
What the hell?
Now, with that being said, the way the game was moved, that 100-point game, it was moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania. The NBA wasn't what it was in 1962.
Oh, we know.
It was barely 15 years old.
It was barely 10 teams.
So of course, they're not really checking for the NBA like that. And what what Wilt Chamberlain did during that time, I mean,
So how is Bill?
it's documented evidence that he did that. In Chamberlain, they changed all the rules for him.
They had to change the
All
rules
of
because the
them.
game was terrible.
No,
the
they had
game
to
was
change
not
the
good in
they
the
had to
60s.
change the rules all for him because he was so much better
How
than
is-
everybody else.
How
That's
is
why they had to
Bill?
widen the
How
lane.
is Bill and Wilt over Kobe and Larry Bird?
I just told you. So
Because they changed the game for them.
They had to change.
The game had
so,
to continue to evolve because first of all, there was only 10 teams in the league.
Which I had
there
to see
was
the tougher
there wasn't
competition
even
more. Keep
enough.
going.
There wasn't even nobody in Wilt's athletic level. There was
Right.
guys about 6'8", 6'9". Wilt
That's
was
not
the lone
true. So
7-footer.
I'm glad you brought that up because
that
the
is
average,
true. You didn't even watch it.
So the average NBA height back then was what? You said 6'7", 6.
I said the average big man height.
So-
the average big man
okay,
height.
so
there wasn't
the-
that many bigs.
the
James
av-
Worthy was
okay,
playing.
so,
I mean, not James Worthy. Elgin Baylor was playing the 4 at 6'6".
So of the 8 teams in the NBA during that time, like
Name
you
the
just said, so Nate Thurman was in that league. He's 6'11".
Mm-hmm.
Bill Russell, he's 6'10" during that time. Chamberlain, he's also
He's about
6
7 feet
and,
tall,
and Wayne Embry, he's 6'9" during that time. That's half the league.
That's embarrassing.
That's half the league. And as far
You just named 4 players, and you said it's half the league.
I didn't bring up Wally, who played for the Philadelphia 76ers. He's also 6'11". So with that being said, the average height during that time was 6'7". The average height in the NBA today, 6'6". So it's not like this.
If we plug in Wilt now, Wilt in the 2000s, he plays a plethora of centers. He plays Joel Embiid. He plays the Joker.
Yep.
You know, he goes out there and he plays Giannis.
Yep.
You know, he even plays Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. Like he plays those type of dudes. You literally go back in the day, he has to play the same team 12 times.
Yep.
Literally 12 times.
Yep.
That's not even realistic.
Yes,
that
it
doesn't even
is.
make no sense.
Because
we
it's
talking
even,
about
because
Kobe
it's
Bryant.
the it's a tougher competition.
No, it's not. You playing
and
the
since
same
you brought
team
that up,
every
I'm glad
week.
you brought that up. They're right, and I got
Every week. If the team ain't good. First of all, no, OG, hold on. I want to say this. Hold on. I just want to say this one thing, and I'm gonna jump off. I'll go sit back over there and relax, brother. If Wilt Chamberlain played on the team, Bill Russell played on the team, they seen the same team every week. So if the team not good, they're gonna beat them every single time. That's why their record's gonna look like that. Kobe Bryant plays a team 3-4 times. If he sees the Spurs 3-4 times, Dallas 3 or 4 times, that's maybe 2 wins, maybe 1. Wilt Chamberlain can see the worst team in the league 12 times in a season because there's only 10 teams. That is 11 wins right there, flat out. That's all I'm saying.
Because you play the same team and you win.
That's all. I mean, shit.
All right, judges, how'd that one go?
I think OG has that. As much as I love Kobe and I don't believe in the Wilt 100 game, I think the Kobe 81 game is the highest scoring game. I do. They played. You said Hershey, the Hershey amusement park. That's where they played basketball. I don't want to.
This is different times.
I heard a lot of arguments about Bill Russell, not enough about Kobe Bryant being the most spectacular player you ever saw. I mean, let's just talk about how great Kobe was as a basketball player instead of debating Russell's, defense he faced.
I don't gotta talk about the ex-boyfriend. I'm me. Why do I gotta talk about the ex-boyfriend? Why we gotta talk about him?
I mean, look, I think people play the game to win the game, and Kobe got 5 championships, which is more than Wilt, and against better competition, in my opinion. So that's why I would have him up there. I'm not a Wilt guy. I'm not a player before 1975 guy. Personally.
Who's a Wilt guy?
Right. Yeah.
Well, besides you. All right.
The 1992 Dream Team would beat the Avengers in 2024.
I'm not going to hate on the Dream Team.
Please do.
14
That's your job, to hate on the Dream Team.
14 out of 15 players made the Hall of Fame, and they had Christian Laettner. But what I am going to do is I'm going to hate on the competition the Dream Team faced. In that finals against Croatia, they had Dragan Petrovic. He averaged 22. RIP, he was great. And Tony Kukoc, 6-man. But there was no one else. And I mean, nowadays, you have Giannis, you have SGA, you have Jokic, you have Luka, you have Wemby, you have all these other players that the Avengers had to play. Yep. And the competition is just so much greater than what the Dream Team had to face. And the Dream Team was really good, but they never actually had a legit team play against them.
So like you just said, they had to face SGA. They smoked that Canadian team. Who's on that Canadian team after SGA? I mean, Jamal Murray was on that team, but he was awful in the Olympics. Who else besides him was on that team? And then you're talking about that Croatian team. Croatia got disbanded because it would have been Divac, it would have been Sabonis. That's who would have been on that team, that Croatian team. Only except it was just that Croatian team who was awesome with Tony Kukoc and with Dragan Petrovic. But that Dream Team was so awesome with everybody else. David Robinson, he was in year 5. Scottie Pippen, he was in year 4. Michael Jordan, he was in year 8. Patrick Ewing, all of these guys were in their prime, with the exception of Larry Bird. Magic Johnson, who's still in 1992, he was still in his prime. He was only 32 years old at that point. He wasn't a good player. He still was an awesome player. And how fast they played, how Magic got everybody else involved in the game, how Jordan was at the peak of his power. How are this Avengers avenging against them when they had a tough time against South Sudan?
Well, you have the Avengers in a hypothetical matchup. The Avengers would have the best player on the court in LeBron. You can agree with that.
A 39-year-old LeBron is better than a 29-year-old Jordan. I'm going to have a heart attack. I can't handle myself. I'm going to lose my mind. No, he is not.
You have Curry,
No.
who can hit the three from anywhere.
He was awful in the Olympics. Up until that game, up until the gold medal game, when they played, he was awful in the Olympics. Awful. He was not good in the Olympics. Everybody talks about how good he was against France in the gold medal game. He wasn't that good. All righty, brother. Good to talk to you.
Until the last 2 minutes of the game. Last 2 minutes. Let's go, Donnie. Yeah.
Oh, good to see you again, brother. Yes, sir. All right.
Not only would the 1992 Dream Team not beat this year's Avengers, they would not beat any U.S. Olympic team after 2004. After USA Basketball got themselves together, and they started having a plan, and they brought everybody in. From 2008 and on, they lose.
2008 and on.
1992 loses.
So that 21 team with Bam and Jason Tatum and Devin Booker
2021
and
is
Drew
not
Holiday.
that is not an Olympic team. I'm talking 2008, 2012, 2016, even the 2020 team that was kind of shaky. 1992 would still lose to them, and then they would lose to 2020.
Why are we losing to Devin Booker and Drew Holiday and Bam Adebayo? Why are we losing to them with Michael Jordan?
The point guards on the 92 team cannot play. And if we're talking specifically I'll stay specifically with the 24 team.
Sure.
The point guards, Magic Johnson, who's old and in a debilitated state, and then you have John Stockton. They cannot play. They cannot play with the point guards today. They are not. Devin Booker, his defense this past summer, amazing.
Yep.
Drew Holiday, amazing. Derek White, amazing.
Yep.
Who is running with Steph Curry? Nobody.
Right.
The guards can't play.
You mean the same Steph Curry who was awful in the Olympics up until the semifinals?
You don't remember the
finals?
Golden Dagger.
Yeah,
You don't remember that.
I remember that,
You don't-
which
you don't-
was in the finals. I remember that. I don't remember any of that against South Sudan. I don't remember any of that against all those other teams. I do remember that late. However, your team, my second team of Stockton, David Robinson, Ewing, Karl Malone, these are the guys that are coming off the bench. These aren't the guys who are starting. These are the guys that are in the rotation that we're talking about transition players. Stockton as a transition guard, getting Malone, getting Barkley, getting these guys in the game, as opposed to having to deal with Bam Adebayo at that time. And I'm a big time Bam Adebayo fan, but having to deal with Bam Adebayo and Drew Holiday and Devin Booker, no way do they beat them.
You're talking about Malone, Robinson, and Ewing playing in the second unit.
Sure.
If those are the three, are you playing Karl Malone at the three? Because if that's happening, then you're putting Kevin Durant at the three. And I'm telling you right now, Karl Malone wants no parts of guarding Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I will.
Olympic Kevin Durant, no parts.
I will agree.
No
with,
parts
I
of that.
will agree with that. Yes.
All right, judges, speak to me.
I think the one point, you're talking about the South Sudan game, the Croatia game. You look at what you said. You look at the last 2 minutes when it mattered. The things that Steph Curry did in those 2 minutes would have been international war crimes in 1992. So for that reason and that reason alone, I think it's got to go to
You
this
do
year.
remember that in the South Sudan game. The old man had to save them.
I mean, look, it's the dream team we're talking about here. It's really, really no comparison. Like the way that they went into that Olympics trying to make a statement with like not giving a shit about anybody felt of it. I don't see that level of dog in any Olympic team since '92. That's just me personally.
All right, this is our last topic, so if y'all have not stepped up or you want to get more words in, now is your time.
I have to listen to this all the time when it comes to OGs and young fans, and the word is NBA young fans understand the game better than OG fans. Hello again. Hello, dear.
So now we have NBA Twitter, we have ESPN app, we have the Real app, we have everything, we have StatMuse, we have infinite access.
Sure.
On the internet, we can watch every game on XYZ streams. We have everything. OGs didn't have that.
No, we didn't.
So
And-
how could you possibly keep up with everything going on?
Well, just because you have it does not mean that you understand it. I mean, you could be in class and you can see all the information. That doesn't necessarily mean that you understand it. So with that being said, I wish that we had stat muse and basketball reference and all of that stuff back then, because I could understand the game way better back then than I do now, because I can put numbers together. I can understand how action works. I didn't have that back then. All I saw was plays. A lot of these people, which you just brought up with NBA Twitter, which is a cesspool, by the way. And
Okay,
it's
speaking
toxic.
of that, the older generation gets tricked by NBA Centel. Younger fans can usually tell.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been tricked by NBA Santel. 100%. I've been tricked by NBA Santel.
Okay.
So that's where you have to start paying attention more.
The media literacy, it's not.
Yeah, well, because when I see things, immediately I'm like, Joel Embiid is retiring. Wait a minute. But then now I have to wait a minute, hold on. That's not legit. And then I look and I'll say, it doesn't say NBA Central. It says, okay, so this is a troll. No doubt about that. So in terms of understanding the game more, I don't want to disrespect you as a younger fan, but there are some things that I do know about the game more than you do. But
Well,
I also
yeah,
think
you are the OG.
but with that being said, there's some things that you could teach me too, and I just don't. I don't want it to be just an idea that I just know more than you. Keep your mouth shut. You don't know what you're talking about. Shut up and listen to me. No, I don't want that to be the case neither. But I also don't want it to be, yo, you're old. You have no idea what you're talking about. The game was in the 1960s. The game was in the 1970s, and you haven't evolved. Yes, I have, because I love what's going on in the NBA today, as opposed to what was going on 20 years ago. I love what's going on in the NBA today.
I got cooked again.
And our final three.
Hello again.
I think it's inarguable that the average fan today understands way more about the average fan back then. You can't compare OGs to young bucks. You can't compare a flip phone to a smartphone. You can't compare a VHS tape to streaming services. One is inarguably better. And with the amount of access that we have today, we can watch more. You had to wait for a certain time and watch a game and watch a rerun to even watch that game. You had to rely on what's on national television and also hearing what those people are saying to you. With the influx of content creators, NBA League Pass, I could watch anything I want, whenever I want, at whatever time I want. The access to information is different. That's why the modern fan today is way smarter than the average fan back then.
You would think that would be the case, considering your access to information. Only except I hear some of the dumbest stuff that I've ever heard in my life from you guys.
And I hear some of the dumbest stuff from OGs.
Right, and the reason why is because we didn't have the information that you have today. And since you're on the subject of
No, you
streaming,
guys have the same information.
Since you have stuff like streaming services, League Pass sucks. League Pass is awful.
YouTube TV is not, though.
I've actually had to unplug my TV because I
YouTube
thought something
TV
was
is
wrong
good.
with my TV because I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with it. No, that's not the problem. League Pass just sucks. I understand the game, and not just me. I feel like there's a lot of other people who understand the game that's my age that recognize that the game is a lot better today than it was. I can't live back in, no, get me wrong now, Joe. There is a guy walking around today that's saying he's 80-something years old. That's like Bob Cousy's the best point guard in NBA history. He's still doing that. I'm not one of those dudes, and I know plenty of guys, because we live in the information age and because I've accessed that information to understand the game, so I can sit here and talk to you and talk to the rest of you guys and have a legit conversation and not look like a complete goofy because I understand what I'm talking about because of the information age.
You are not the measuring stick for the average old fan,
Yes,
though.
I am.
I think that you are of the age group, but you don't represent them because your opinions are a lot like the opinions of new school people.
Right.
We agree with you that Larry Bird is better than Kevin Durant. We agree with you about these all-time great players. I think the average old fan is just trying to diminish the product, talking about fouls, talking about defense. They don't take into account any of the complicated stuff that is going on today, both defensively and offensively. The game is more complicated now, and a lot of older fans don't want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hello.
Again?
Hello.
What's up?
So, Joel made a lot of good points generally.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to get to the root of this. This is clearly a very personal issue. This is the question of, you said young fans don't know as much as old fans, right? Correct. When you're on TikTok and you see 13-year-olds in your comments, they don't know as much as you. They do not. They're 13 years old. That current OGs versus young fans, 100% true. You're not going to see a 13-year-old that knows more than you. You got to look at it as proportionally. When you were 13 versus when a 13-year-old today, and for all the reasons they mentioned, the access to information, proportionally younger fans know more than OGs did when they were their age.
Right.
13-year-olds are going to be stupid no matter what generation you're talking about. And 45-year-olds are going to be smart and are more knowledgeable, more experienced in any generation we're talking about. So if you compare that no matter what era, if this is the 50s kids versus the 80s kids or the 80s kids versus the 2020s kids, the kids are going to be dumb as hell.
Right.
That just comes with the territory.
And I've actually spoken to kids that are 16, 17 years old that know the game, and I can actually have conversations with them, and they talk to me, as opposed to some young ones, considering what the information is that we have today, that are clueless, have no idea. And I'm trying to figure out, how do you not know this? How do you not know what's going on? I actually had a kid come to me not too long ago who said, "Hey, OG, who is Alex English?" Oh, my God, man. How do you not know who Alex English is? With the information that we have in today's game, we have a guy who scored the most points from 1980 to 1989. When Bird, when Bernard King, when Magic, when Dominique Wilkins was running around. And you can get this information. The fact that you don't know this is a disservice to you as a youngster, because if I had this kind of access when I was 14, 15 years old, because that happened to me, I don't know who Elgin Baylor is at that point. My uncle is turning me on to him, like, okay, who is Elgin Baylor? And then I go home and do some homework and find out, oh, shit, this guy is awesome. I don't know who Elgin Baylor is at that point. I'm too wrapped up in Dominique Wilkins.
Now imagine if you were your dad and you had to talk to the dumb kids of the 80s and you had to ask them about players that played on the Hawks.
Right.
Who's the fourth man on the Hawks in 1967?
Right.
I don't know. I guarantee you back then they did not know. It was even worse proportionally. So yes, 45-year-olds smarter than 13-year-olds. Today's 13-year-olds with all of the, like, obviously there's analytic stuff that some people would say makes people not as smart. That's like, you can debate whether or not young people should be talking about numbers, talking about eye tests, whatever. At least they got both.
Right.
You know, that just the simple information age that you have access to more things, on average, ultimately is gonna be higher. So to argue against that is equally as silly as to argue that 13-year-olds are smarter than 45-year-olds. You know.
I'm just here to bridge the gap. That's what I'm here to do. That's all.
And I respect it.
That's what I'm here to do. Absolutely.
Either way, 13-year-olds are stupid. We can agree on that.
Also, because of y'all, a lot of the younger fans are smarter than they would have been.
It's true. Doing the Lord's work.
All right, grand finale. Make it count, Mo.
My man back again.
Yes, we're back.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to sit here and say older fans are smarter or vice versa, but I will say people are dumb in general. Dumb does not have a timeline. Dumb doesn't have a year. Dumb is dumb. What is different, though, is the accessibility that we have to see who's dumb or not. Anybody can get one of these mics. Anybody can go to a Starbucks and get Wi-Fi and tweet or TikTok the most random takes ever. You have the ability to hear that and see that compared to back then.
Sure.
You don't have the ability to be that unless you're like in a barber shop or you're in school. So you hear more dumb stuff.
Right.
That doesn't mean that more dumb stuff is apparent these days.
But I feel like the information that you have access to lessens you being that dumb, because you absolutely have the access to know what's going on. So I'm not in the dark about who Devin Booker is. I'm not in the dark about who Quentin Grimes is, because I have the access, because I have League Pass, as opposed to years by. You don't know who Dale Ellis is. You have no idea who this dude is.
I still barely know who he is.
Right. You don't know who and what you're going to do is you're going to go back and you're going to go watch some footage of Dale Ellis and be like, oh, shit, this dude was really good. So if you had this kind of access back then, you had the choice to see how you can view players. And what I do when I evaluate players, I make sure that I get all the information because I have access to it, which means to me that you're choosing to be dumb.
But people choose to be dumb back then too. It just plain basic,
did they
ignorant,
though?
normal
we
bias.
didn't have that information. Like I wish I could have seen John Stockton more than I did. I wish I could have seen Charles Barkley more than I did.
So you're saying people are dumb now because we have the information to
and you don't use it. And you don't use it.
The information was available back then too. There was newspapers. Those were the mediums that y'all used back then.
And I'm glad you brought that up.
Y'all ain't used
and
to
I'm glad you brought the newspapers up. And I know we got to go, unfortunately. But the newspapers that we had, I had to wait and listen to you tell me what it is, as opposed to today where there's actual information from Basketball Reference, from StatMuse, and I can do my homework on all of this stuff from NBA.com and understand the game a lot better from a statistical standpoint, from a strategic standpoint. I couldn't do that back then. All I saw was the box score. Dominique Wilkins went 38 last night. I didn't care that he went 6 for 22. I didn't care about that.
Dumb is dumb.
Dumb is dumb. Yes, sir.
So burden of proof is typically on the prosecution. They need to definitively prove that this generation now is better than his generation. So even if you think today is better, they had to actually prove that to you. Did they do enough? So let's go one by one and reveal the final results.
I'll start. I think it was a lively debate. I thank the OG here for bridging that gap in a game that we all love. But if you could pass me that glass, please. I'm drinking the haterade.
Ooh, okay.
Props.
Well, I mean, when you start off early with an argument that Magic Johnson is a 6'9" Ben Simmons, you've lost and you're not going to recover from that. And I didn't hear after that enough hate. I saw deference. I saw respect. And I don't think that's what I was looking for. So
He was looking for smoke.
I got it.
He's like, where's the smoke?
I got to side with the fan.
Wow. And to be fair, you're an editor, so you understand the angles that people need to take to convey a point.
You
And
got to
they did
be
not do
able to
that.
argue either side of the debate, and I often didn't hear either side argued strong enough by the haters.
All right, I'll get some of the deciding vote. I feel like part of being young is thinking you know everything, and then part of getting old is realizing you didn't know shit. And and with each passing day, I myself am becoming an OG. And to hear you guys come in here and make some solid points, but overall avoid some of the topics and talk about other things that didn't have to do with the topic at hand, I felt that OG did a better job of kind of staying on topic, making clear points, and overall, I'm going with OG. I'm going with the fan.
The OGs come away victorious. Tune in next time, but let us know what y'all want to see in the comments debated next.